What a pleasure to sit down with the incredible Rebecca. Rebecca and I started working together back in 2022. This is a woman with a really big mission and a beautiful vision, and we've got to meet in real life and work together for so many years now that I can't believe this episode is coming out now and not many moons ago because Rebecca has a really powerful message and a really beautiful source of just creativity and emotional healing that she shares with the world. So, Rebecca, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Carolina, thank you so much. I'm so blessed to be here today. And I just want to let your audience know that you are one of I like to call them my angels, my masters that help guide me. And the way we connected was truly just on intuition and yes, the energy that I receive, and you're so soulful, and I just love working with you and getting to know you. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Well, Rebecca, tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I now am a certified life coach. I love to call myself a creative life coach because I've always been an artist and identified that way growing up. But like so many artists, did other things in life, just, we needed to make ends meet and had a family young, and so art school was kind of put on the back burner. And then later, I kind of started dabbling back in. It was always kind of my safe space to be. And it was something that during my journey of really abusing alcohol, drinking every day, I started to realize, Carolina, that it was really affecting not only me, my level of energy and my creativity was really being affected, but I hadn't connected that at that point yet. So
Mm,
now the work I do is all around helping others do that kind of work through the creative process of of expressing through any kind of a journey.
yeah. Oh, well, I love it. I'm looking right now for anyone who's not watching this on a YouTube or whatnot. There's just a beautiful canvas behind Rebecca just showing her expression. And I think what's so interesting about your story that I've always found so just incredible is like the sense of like it's never too late. Like you're always getting into something new and really exploring your passions and that creativity. And so you mentioned earlier that like, you had to, you probably had a normal kind of corporate job for a lot of your career. When did you start like really painting again?
I really started painting again in my 50s. And
Wow.
so I'm well into my sixth decade of life. And yeah, so there's some excitement about that. We can talk about how things can really open up at this stage in life. But I started painting in my 50s. I always still did creative things, even as like side gigs. I lived in Los Angeles at the time when I was raising my kids, and there was always a lot of work there to do, even as freelance art. And, um, but again, it kind of got put on the back burner. And then well into my 50s, when I was an empty nester, I realized that I was really being kind of driven to be more expressive. And looking back now, I was really kind of going through a quest of like an expansion and seeking. I'd always been a seeker, and creativity just kind of always went hand in hand with that journey for me. So I started kind of just bringing out paints and painting, and then as the universe would work, I met these two wonderful women who became neighbors of mine who were artists from New Orleans, and they had a studio, and so we just started painting together, and so I did that just started coming out more. And of course, part of that journey is that I was also um, alcohol was a big part of my daily routine, and so that was also still a big part of my life during that kind of creative process, dabbling back in, feeling a real sense of peace and connectedness when I was painting. But not understanding yet how to really use that as my gift, to help me work through a transformation that really needed to happen at that stage. And painting was kind of part of that. And I started just listening again and painting again.
Yeah. Well, I love that so much because I feel like we're all so creative when we're children, you know? Like we dabble in so many beautiful creative expressions and then like we zip it up in adulthood. We become these adults, right? That go to these jobs with our briefcases and whatnot. And I feel like
Right.
once you get to a certain point, if you don't see yourself as a creative person, then you usually never go back to it, right? And I think that took a lot of bravery to, in your 50s say, I want to start painting again. I want to be an artist and really positioning yourself like that. It's such a brave, bold move. And I think you give permission to so many other women to do that. And it sounds like from your story, it's like just kneeling, getting back into that creative process is what started to kind of unlock and unpack a lot of other things in your life that you kind of wanted to change or you wanted to have more ownership over. So it sounds like even leaning into creativity was kind of the door that helped you unlock and unpack like the relationship you had with alcohol. Does that sound correct?
It really is. And of course, while it was happening, I didn't realize that. But and I think a lot of us, especially as women, and as we get through, if we have raised a family, or even if we haven't, and we've been career women, or we've been married or had different relationships, there's just so much, at least for me, that I think we kind of leave behind, like dreams and aspirations and things that we just feel like, oh, it's, we've kind of, if we haven't done it by now, we're not going to do it. In fact, all the stories, all the limiting beliefs that we have about it's too late. And so yeah, it was all part of that journey for me. And yeah, very inspirational to tap and not be afraid. You say it takes bravery, and it does, because there's that whole kind of also imposter thing that comes up, like, it's been years. You were in school years ago. What are you going to do? You're going to start dabbling back in. You're in a different, by that time, I have moved to a different state. So I wasn't even, connected anymore. But, yes, I guess I've always kind of been somebody who, once I get my mindset, there's a little bit of a rebel in me that's just going to kind of go for it anyway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's what I did.
Oh, well, let's bring that rebel-ness back because not only do you become an artist and, really start painting again, but as you go through your own alcohol-free transformation, you decide to become a coach and an online educator and facilitate that same kind of spaces and healing for other women. So, how did you get prompted into that? What kind of led your soul into wanting to like, I think art can sometimes be really private, right? But then it takes like another level to be like, I want to share this with more people. I want to share this kind of transformation with the world. So, what kind of prompted that for you?
I think what prompted it was once I made alcohol really irrelevant and realized and went through the journey of doing that and changing our whole mindset around it. It also opened up like a way to connect with others. There wasn't like that false sense of everything that alcohol does. It's all like really a big lie that we hide behind. And then it was like I knew somewhere deep down that my true essence could not come forward as long as I was, having this liquid that was like a numbing agent. And um, once I went through that journey, I realized that I needed to marry the two things of anyone that has gone through a process of changing a habit or a lifestyle that is no longer serving them, like I did with my relationship with alcohol. You have to learn a new way to be in the world, show up in the world, and that can be intimidating. But you also find ways to tap in. And I love helping women tap in. And as we know, everything, it's not for everyone to use this medium to tap in and to express. But I realized that, and through the help of really good business coach like Carolina, who helps us really see, I say that I'm serious about it because we get in our own way sometimes, and I wasn't able to see that gift. And so just working with you helped me realize that I wanted to share that gift in that way, helping, the expression when you don't have words for something, but you can express it, it's safe. And so that's
Mm.
how that happened. And now these workshops have like evolved, and I'm still evolving. So it's really beautiful because we never stop learning, we never stop evolving, we never stop transforming and learning. And so, you learn that these gifts that you have, when you share them, they become amplified. And it just is this beautiful ripple of a frequency that not only passes through me, but then through others, and then they pass it on through others. And so there it goes. It's really
Mm.
beautiful.
Tell me more about these workshops. So I know you do, painting workshops with women, and it's not just about learning how to paint per se, like a class or anything like that. It's more about, you say, this emotional expression. So tell us, like, how does that work? What do you come into expecting? Like, what happens afterwards? What is kind of like your vision with this beautiful art form?
So what happens typically, so what it's called is color, language of the soul. And the reason that came to me was because that was really my language. Color, I realized how much color affects us. And, it's a whole other thing we can delve into, and how each color has its own beautiful energy and frequency. But yeah, this is what happens to me. I get so evolved in what, the excitement of it all, that I get lost. But so to bring me back around, how am I sharing that? How am I showing that with others? What happens afterwards is that you show up, you don't have to be an artist. That's probably the question I get the most. Like, Rebecca, I'm not an artist. I'm not a creative person. How many times do we hear that, or we've been told that at a young age, and we believe it? Where, like you said, I mean, the truth of the matter is, we are all, when we're children, we don't have those stories or those inhibitions, so we just let go.
Yeah.
And so you come to a workshop with that mindset, not of being an artist, but as I guide you through, there are different exercises depending on the workshop, different themes, but we tap into different emotions that we're expressing in that moment. And it creates, at the end of the day, an abstract um, of what your feelings were in the moment. And the feedback that I get, it's really beautiful. It's like people say they have permission, to let go of control and just allow flow. And it's a beautiful lesson in life too. So it's all like a meditation, really.
Mm. So it's like coming with this open mind of like what insights, what healing, what kind of spiritual ahas we might have through the power of creativity and expression, and kind of almost like channeling, right? Like with this medium that is very flowy, and just allowing that to kind of be what it is. I know you do a lot of the abstract too, which I can see, which is so gorgeous behind you, but I love that too, is like tapping into the like more feminine, less logical part of our brain. I'm sure is a huge part of what goes on in your workshops, instead of trying to like make something super structured and,
Right.
follow the rules and stuff like that.
Yes, it's intuitive. So the point isn't we're all going to paint this thing and everybody's will be similar but different. No, it ends up being, everybody ends up with something uniquely what they were expressing in those moments. And participants, and I even use it with clients sometimes for one-on-one coaching. We may do an exercise like this on one of the sessions, and they say that it can feel peaceful and empowering and relaxing at the end of it, and
Yeah.
kind of even a weight is lifted, and it allows us to sometimes even see whatever we're dealing with in a whole new way.
Mm. I know you're also a very spiritual person, so I'm curious, how do you bring spirituality into your business, either through like your own lens of like how it moves you or how you show up, and then also through, how you work with people?
Well, yes, I do consider myself very much a spiritual person. I believe so much in the higher, in source, and that we all come from source and we are all part of that, and we are all love, and we all are, um, worthy of everything good. And so I think for me, the lesson really came after the whole alcohol journey, because I never looked at it as such a dark energy. I mean, whenever any of us, I think, have our first toast or glass of wine or beer or whatever it is, we never go into it thinking, I hope one day I am going to have a real problem with this, and I'm not going to be able to, cut back, or it's just going to be, none of us ever imagine that. And yet, when you find yourself, in your 50s and 60s, so I was 60 when I finally, the aha
Yeah.
began, you're talking sometimes decades of whether it's just social drinking or, you don't even have to have that rock bottom. I never did. But clearly it was deadening my essence. And talk about my spiritual essence. Um, that like I thank it. I'm so grateful. I give it my thanks every day because of the way it was full of I was putting toxic liquid in me, and it couldn't flourish and it couldn't shine its brightest. And when we are no longer numbing, suddenly we are open to the light. And so I practice, I guess, my spirituality by showing up for this work every day, whether it's just something small, a little message on something, on social media, um, painting something as a way to tap into my spirituality, obviously meditating. And now the newest thing I'm a student of is the crystal singing bowls for energy and
Mm.
frequency healing. And I'm just barely at the beginning of that. But here comes another gift just by opening up.
Yeah. Well, look at a woman who, like I said, continually reinvents herself every year, every decade, is just going into new passions, new ambitions, and that light and that passion that you share back to other people, like it shows and it really does glow. And I love some of the things that we came up with in this conversation, because like first we had this kind of idea that I think it's a myth in society, and I think it's kind of a myth from, some of the painters and writers who were around in the 1900s that somehow alcohol fuels creativity, which I think personally for me and my experience and your experience, it couldn't be further from the truth that truly it does block that. But then also this other like deeper layer that it also dampens our spiritual connection, right? And it is
Yeah.
this like numbing, deadening block. And I'm curious in your perspective, like, did you ever buy into that idea that alcohol helped creativity? And you have your Hemingways and your, Fitzgeralds and all these kind of people, Pablo Picasso probably, who were like more in the heavy drinking side. And we have this culture that like artists thrive from being kind of a little out of their mind, but it really does like dampen it. And to those two examples, for example, like those people actually lost their lives early because of alcohol, right? So how much more creativity would the world have seen from them? And not because of alcohol, but in spite of it, obviously. So I'm curious what your take on that is.
Absolutely. I did have that belief, Carolina. I thought you couldn't create meaningful art without brokenness and, suffering and yeah, where did those stories come from? Maybe art school, maybe things I heard, you think of Van Gogh too, chopping off his ear, madness. And, it's not to say that their addictions and their suffering wasn't an avenue as it was for me when I was abusing, drinking way too much to numb this pain and be able to create something else. But that creation is coming not from our true highest self, it's
Mm.
coming from the dark shadow self. And at least that's the way I see it. And it's not bringing forth the light to give to the world. And yeah, so of course, I don't believe it's furthest from the truth now that you have to be in that state of mind to create anything meaningful. Now, what's being created is coming from a completely different energy source. So I feel it as I'm painting or as I'm working with people. I actually can feel the energy is different. I don't have fancy words for it,
You know,
but
it's so
I
fascinating that you say that because I was actually just reading a book about how, we have what's called a lower mind, and it's like part of what makes us really human. We get into anger and frustration, and it really sounds like to me, I've never heard it said this way before, but like some of the other painters and artists of different centuries, they really tapped into like anger or rage or pain, to create certain things. And then we have this higher mind, the part of us that's more connected to spirituality and God and our source, and
yeah.
the part of us that's more intuitive, and the part of us that's even more eternal and less petty and stuff like that. And that's so cool to be able to distinguish that, like, often alcohol fueled art through that is like really tapping into that lower mind aspect. And then this kind of connection, like, I love to hear it from an artist herself who's actually like, it's really different in this avenue and really, guided by that. Does that sound like what you were
It
saying?
is, and it is very different because when you're in the flow or the zone of creativity, time really does stop. You completely lose track of this dimension, if you will. And sometimes you even, when you're finished with, maybe you look at the clock and 3 hours maybe has passed, say, and it feels like 20 minutes, or when you come back, and it's so different. Um, it flows through. It's not you. And I think that's when Pablo Picasso said it, and even, the creator says it, that we have it in us. And it's because it's not really, it flows, that energy flows. It's not me. It's not Rebecca. It's not her ego. It's not her technical, it flows. And I think that's why in these workshops, when we're not painting from an ego perspective, there's no attachment to it has to look perfect or has to look this way, or the value of it is about me. It truly is this flow of beautiful energy that is coming through.
Mhm.
I'm
And what are
sorry, I'm
some of your
sorry.
favorite things that, like, no, no, what are your, like, some of your favorite things that you've created from that energy? Like, maybe give us a description of like one of them.
Mostly it is abstract and interestingly enough, patterns, repeats. I've always been drawn to pattern from the time I was very young. I've been painting since I was really young. I think about it now. I mean, young, like 9, go get an old, somebody put out, a chest of drawers for the trash to pick it up. And I would go get it, like it in my bedroom and paint it whimsical, you know, just redo it, just make it something new. And yeah, it's the energy of allowing creativity to flow through at any age in life. Is I would, you know, tell anyone to do it. Don't be afraid. Just, play. It's about play too.
Mhm.
We didn't say that part.
Well, I love that we have like your workshops that we can direct people to. So we'll be sure to include those in the show notes so that people can get started with you right away. But let's say someone can't attend a workshop or whatnot. Like what would be your advice for someone to start tapping into that play and that creativity, especially at any stage in life?
Like literally so many women that I have worked with have said, "Oh, it's just that. Like, you don't need to have the perfect studio. You don't need to have all the perfect paintbrushes, paper." We get into that whole thing too. No, whatever you have at home, even if it's your kids' stuff, just start playing, get it out, start watching paint flow, just see what happens, just allow. Um, if you've never done it, some people, they're very intimidated, then yeah, join a workshop or get some friends together and see what you can do. Um, but my advice is go for it.
Mm. And when do you feel most inspired, Rebecca?
Creatively, in nature, I would have to say nature is such a muse. It is, wow, nature, because you just see how everything is connected, and it's extremely inspiring. And I guess I feel the most inspired then, or when I'm in some state of meditation.
Mm. Well, I know you're bringing your love of nature together with that creativity and hosting a women's retreat coming up in Guatemala. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm really excited about that. So I've collaborated with Amy Hill. Um, and yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about the retreat in Antigua, Guatemala. It'll be in February 5th through the 9th. It's 4 days, 5 nights. And so it's gonna be a place where it's gonna be intimate, first of all. So about 8 women all together. And we've got this amazing like hacienda. And we're gonna have it's going to be transformational because we are going to have different workshops, and part of it will be some of this art creative expression. Another part will be um, sober travel workshops, because this retreat is for, I love to say it's for sober curious or sober creative sisters, because
Mm.
you don't have to be alcohol free, but it's about being curious about being on a journey like this where alcohol is just off the table. It's not even gonna be part of what we do. And instead, we're gonna just really get ourselves, immersed in culture and cooking. And in Guatemala, the cacao, the chocolate is sacred. And so we'll be going to a place where we're gonna get to mix some of that and learn more about that. And yeah, some gentle yoga, some sound baths, just a lot of time for reflection and more transformation. And so we want women to have an experience of like radical self-love. Like this is really about digging deeper and seeing what can happen next.
Sounds so juicy. Oh my gosh. Well, if I wasn't busy with another trip, I would totally be like so on board to go to this. It sounds so gorgeous. I've actually never been to Guatemala outside of the airport, and I know that that culture and the jungle and just how gorgeous it really is there and how much like deeply you can feel, I think, into
Yes.
that spiritual essence and that intuitive gifts that we all have. And I just see it so well for you, so fitting for what you're going to be doing and leading. I am obsessed with your work, Rebecca. I love that you're guiding women to find their, self-expression and that, they can start artistry, they can start their creativity, they can start, spiritually connecting with themselves at any age, and through that lens of like reevaluating alcohol and really finding yourself. I think that's so important to say. I'm going to ask you where people can find you. So if anyone wants to attend your workshops or go to Guatemala with you, where can they find all that information?
Yes, thank you. I would love to share. So you can find me on Instagram at Curious on Life. And then my website where you can learn about the workshops and also the retreats, all the links are there, is my full name, RebeccaGuevaraWingler.com. And I'm sure we'll maybe have it on a show note so that somebody could just link to it. But yes, there's some great information there. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to help anyone with the logistics about, sometimes people, I forget because I'm such an adventurer and a traveler. I love just up and going everywhere. But, sometimes that can be kind of intimidating. So I'm happy to answer questions and help people figure out how to get from point A to point B.
Mm. Amazing. Well, I know you would be so helpful with that. And what a great person to like, especially when we have this desire to go somewhere, but like maybe our family doesn't want to go, or maybe we don't have a friend we want to go with. I think going on a women's retreat like this is such a special experience. Plus the depth and the transformation you have, it's so much more than just a trip. It's so much more than just a travel experience, right? Like it really can be
Really is.
life-changing. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear all the life-changing stories and transformations as you guys get back. And be sure if anyone's interested in that to, go into the show notes, get Rebecca's links. Do be able to check out her art workshops too, because I think that that is something we really don't allow ourselves to do as adults. We have like this set personality that was kind of programmed into being a responsible, realistic adult. And I think we did really lose that sense of play and that sense of
Yeah.
creativity, and sometimes I think maybe we're scared about being beginners again, but like, what would you say to someone who has that fear?
I say put the fear behind, put her in the back seat, and look at it, come to it with curiosity. I just love that word. I mean, just let's not have any expectation. Let's just show up and see what happens.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for your beautiful grace and wisdom on this show. And I'm just appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Carolina. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.